The Feed.
ABC Audio announces exclusive multi-year podcast advertising partnership with Libsyn's AdvertiseCast. Woo-hoo! Using the Shure MVX2U on the field. Thoughts on minimum guarantees in podcasting? The Latino Podcast Listener Report 2023 is coming, and as is an amazing pre-report networking event called Monetizing Latine Podcasts. All kinds of cool podcasting tools and workflows. So much feedback on feed swaps and feed drops. My love for Matter. And, of course, the latest geographic and user agents. Hello, I am Elsie Escobar, Director of Community and Content for Libsyn, and this is episode 252 of The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast, the podcast that takes it beyond how to podcast into keeping you podcasting, yes, you, with podcasting tips and all kinds of information for the everyday podcaster. And, you know, a little behind the scenes, taking you inside Libsyn. As always, if you want to be featured on the show, as you will hear so many of your voices are, you can do it this way. You send in your 30-second promo, right? So you attach it to an email and send it to thefeed@libsyn.com. If you don't have a promo, but you want your voice on the show, you can ask us a question. You can add to a conversation something we've asked or something that you're thinking through, and send us your voice feedback. You can call us at 412-573-1934, or you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed. Can't wait to hear from you. And now on to our main conversation with Rob Walsh, VP of Podcaster Relations at Libsyn, as well as my co-host, right after the first promo of this episode. Pick My Adventure Show.
No matter where I go, people secretly and sometimes openly want to know how I can afford to travel year-round. While I've spent over a decade traveling, I'm not even at the halfway point of seeing all 195 countries. However, there are quite a bit of people who have visited every country in the world. I plan to talk to all of them, asking them the sacrifices they've made to see every country, what were their favorites and least favorites, their craziest experiences, tips on how we can travel more, and yes, how they can afford to travel nonstop. I'm Kevin Liu, the host of the Pick My Adventure Show, and I'm glad you're ready to hear what it takes to be one of the world's most traveled.
Hello, Rob.
Good generic time of the day, Elsie. Or maybe I should even say week.
Oh my gosh. That's right. Good generic time of who knows when this is.
We are recording on a Saturday, which is not normal.
Yes, very unusual for us, for sure, to be recording on a Saturday. Okay, but let's get started. We got a lot to cover. In fact, we probably have 2 episodes worth of content that has already been trying to be filtered. So
anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Absolutely, right? Okay, so we have a big press release.
Yes, you want to take this one?
Yeah, let's go ahead. So this was a biggie that came out for Libsyn. Quote, ABC Audio announces exclusive multi-year podcast advertising partnership with Libsyn's AdvertiseCast. Unquote. Woohoo. So here's a little bit of the full PR minus a little marketing speak. ABC Audio announced an exclusive multi-year podcast advertising deal with Libsyn's AdvertiseCast. This strategic partnership will position ABC Audio's podcast portfolio for continued growth. Liz Alessi, and if I did not pronounce your name correct, Liz, I am very sorry, Vice President of ABC Audio said, quote, ABC Audio's podcast business is flourishing, and we're poised to make several exciting content announcements this fall. We're thrilled to have AdvertiseCast in our corner as we expand our podcasting footprint even further and take this business to new heights, unquote. ABC Audio's diverse library of podcasts features ABC News flagship daily news podcast, Start Here, winner of the Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence in Sound in 2022 and 2023, as well as reclaimed the story of Mamie Till Bobley, which won the 2023 Edward R. Murrow Award for podcasting. ABC Audio also offers listeners a robust true crime collection that includes The King Road Killings, Truth and Lies, and 2020. Dave Hanley, Chief Revenue Officer of Libsyn's AdvertiseCast, said, quote, "We are excited to embark on this strategic exclusive advertising partnership with ABC Audio, a true icon in the media industry. By combining our expertise in podcast advertising with ABC Audio's authoritative voice and content, we are confident that this partnership will deliver unparalleled value to listeners and advertisers alike," unquote. With a commitment to excellence in journalism and storytelling, ABC Audio podcast advertisers can feel confident that their brands will be represented alongside top quality content. AdvertiseCast will offer advertisers a combination of host-read and programmatic options that will be seamlessly incorporated into ABC Audio's podcasts. For more information or to advertise in ABC Audio's portfolio of podcasts, please reach out to sales@advertisecast.com, unquote. Woohoo!
So congratulations to the AdvertiseCast team for bringing over ABC's audio podcast. The mouse is in the house.
The mouse is in the house. Yes, this is amazing. And what else? Speaking
Well, I would
of
say,
Disney?
well, speaking of Disney, their future owners, according to many rumors on the interwebs, had a little event this past week. But before we get to that, here is a recording that will set up for that event's announcements. So, Elsie, I mentioned on the last show I was going to go ahead and buy the MVX2U digital audio interface, the USB-C version, the one that just came out, and I did go ahead and get it, and I am now recording here with a Shure SM58 mic plugged into it, into a USB-C, into my iPad Pro with a USB-C port. My assumption is this will work just as fine plugging into the new iPhone 15 that has USB-C. This seems to work great. This is out of the box. I have not modified the settings or the gains or anything, which you can do if you plug it into a laptop. You download a software and you can modify it. But this is out of the box, plugged in, the MVX2U USB-C with a Shure SM58 mic plugged into an iPad Pro with the M1 processor and USB-C port. Note, I did try a Lightning to USB-C cable and connecting to my iPhone 13 Pro, and it did not work at all, nor did I expect it to. However, as I said on the recording, I fully expect the MVX2U to work with the new iPhone 15s, which all have USB-C, as was that announcement that they were going to have USB-C was kind of expected and not really a big secret there. Which, if it does work, will be, in my opinion, the biggest news out of the Apple event per podcasters. I should also point out that the iPad Pro M1 that I did the recording on comes with a USB Type-C 4 Thunderbolt 4 port. The iPhone 15 Pros are listed as USB 3, and the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus is listed as USB 2. Once the iPhone 15s are released, I will try connecting it and we'll find out. But given in the event they said you can use your iPhone to charge your Apple Watch or your AirPods with a USB-C cord, it really should work. There is power going to the MVX2U. Hopefully we'll have information for this for you before the next episode. And once I do some testing, I'll let you know. But overall, I was really impressed with the quality of the recording when connecting, Shure SM58 to my iPad Pro. Per the Apple event, there were 4 new iPhones announced as expected and new Apple Watches as expected. And really, per podcasting, it was all around USB-C ports on the new iPhone 15s. Again, if they actually do support us connecting things like this into it. Hopefully more by the next episode, or if not the next one, the one after.
Fab.
Yeah. Some news in the acquisition space, or acquisitions in our space. Claritas has acquired Arts AI, which is one of those prefix companies we recently approved for tracking your pod audience for advertisers. It's one that you can add under prefixes. And if you go into settings and in advanced tools, and you'll see prefixes, Arts AI and Claritas actually is another one, are both approved as prefixes, but Claritas has now acquired Arts AI. So congratulations to the Arts AI folks. So do you want to talk about this next one here, the podcast scam, which comes out of Theo Von's clip from episode 461?
Yeah, it just give a little behind the scenes. It's something that people have been talking about quietly out there. Cast Media not paying some of their people that were on their network.
Allegedly. We got to say
Allegedly. Correct. Allegedly. Thank you so much. Allegedly not paying some of their people in their network, and it's small little rumblings. And I guess, I hadn't really thought about this, but I guess if there's anybody that you're going to not pay and they all have shows and platforms, more likely than not, they're going to then start to post about it because it's one of their biggest leverage points. And I guess, given all of this stuff, there was one episode of Theo Von that was what started the firestorm, correct? As in, they just exposed some stuff.
We'll bring this down to what this all supposedly, allegedly is around MGs. And for those not familiar, MG stands for minimum guarantee. So Cast Media was giving MGs out to their producers. And when they give a lot of MGs and guarantee a lot of these MGs, and then there's a downturn or the sales team doesn't do the job and you don't sell enough to cover the MGs, you start running out of cash really quick. So there have been some others that have talked about the reason they lost money in their public statements for podcasting. Some of the companies that are out there traded, that MGs are what hurt their profitability, hurt their cash flow, hurt that. They overestimated on MGs. So you had a lot of these companies that just were paying like drunken sailors and just way overpaid for MGs. And I can tell you, I know multiple podcasters that got MGs. There was no business sense in those MGs because we looked at them. They were presented to us and we ultimately heard how much they went for. And we were like, okay, if you sold that show out 100% and got the max CPMs, you can't pay that. I was like,
yeah.
You're hoping the show is going to double the audience size. Maybe that's the only hope you have is that the show would double their audience. And for established shows, that just doesn't happen. And worse, sometimes people are giving MGs for shows that haven't even launched. No idea where the show is going to be. And they're like, oh, well, this show's like that show. And that show's getting 1 million downloads an episode. So we're going to be like that. Or they're a celebrity and you think they're going to be like that. You just can't do that. I mean, people that write MGs for shows that haven't launched, just bad business 101. Hashtag cash flow issues.
Yeah. But we absolutely have seen that though, right, Rob? Like the way that it's kind of come out and you've been able to see that math wasn't mathin'.
I had an agent say to me recently for an MG that was given to a show that hadn't launched, they offered stupid money. When the agent is saying the money they got was stupid, that's the position that some of these are in, and they get themselves into this. And any downturn, or in some cases, you don't even need a downturn. It was just a bad business deal. Like a lot of things, companies come in, they overestimate, and then they lose money. And then ultimately, Cast was acquired by Podcast One. And if you go and listen to the Theo Von clip from episode 461 or the one from exposing a podcast scam, we'll have a link to that in the show notes. And he went through and kind of looked at this in detail, even interviewed Colin from Cast Media. That was a very good and well put together video. But again, all this is allegedly. But if you want to hear what allegedly happened from the horse's mouth, Theo Von, who was directly impacted by this, will tell you his thoughts unfiltered.
Yeah. We'll have a link to those things in the show notes, so you guys can go ahead and listen for yourselves. I think I'm always really partial to source material as well. I mean, I love a summary about things that happen. I love hot takes and or reporting that retells its tales. But I think that one of the bits of power that we have as consumers nowadays is that we can really go and listen and or watch the source material of a lot of these different things. And you get an opportunity to suss it out on your own and follow things on your own as well from what you see out there. So hopefully you'll be able to do some of that if this is the kind of conversation that really like makes you go, ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I want to point out, MGs, we haven't really talked about MGs on the show. And what happens is if a podcaster is making good money, goes and hires an agent, the agent's going to try to get them an MG, a minimum guarantee, right? That's the way they want to go. But a lot of times for podcasters, the MG doesn't make sense from their own cash flow perspective, because an MG is a minimum guarantee. You're going to get paid this a minimum amount by each month. And then at the end of the year, you're going to get trued up on what you made over the MG. Well, any financially responsible company that's offering an MG is going to offer an MG below what you're going to make by a decent amount. So in case there's a downturn, just to protect on downside. For example, let's say you're making $480,000 a year right now, and you're getting paid every month at a regular clip based on that $480,000. But the MG might come in at, conservatively at $240,000, half of that. Mm-hmm. So now your monthly payment is actually half of what you had before, and you have to wait till the end of the year to get a big bonus. Mm-hmm. So to make it true up. I recently saw this. A show that we were working with that we were paying really good wanted to then start getting an MG, and we're like, why? This is going to be worse for you. Just continue what you're getting, because what we can offer you for an MG is going to be less than half of where you're at now, and your monthly payments are going to be less until the end of the year. Sometimes the thought of that financial security seems nice, and again, the agents are going to push for that because they're basing their worth on getting you that guarantee. But if you're making good money, you may be better off not doing the MG and just continuing on with what you got, especially if it's more than you need. Don't, what do they say? Hogs get fat, pigs get slaughtered, or pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, whatever the phrase is. Just don't get too greedy sometimes. My advice.
I think that there's something to be said for people understanding the longevity of things, right? And what it actually is going to take to make a business profitable and sustainable. Because even if I'm just putting my own producer hat on or my own creator hat on, in the moment, getting a minimum guarantee would feel good. It feels great. It feels like there's cash in the bank, and we all want cash in the bank. We all want to have that money so that we can make choices to continue to making better content, be able to really build out a team. Like there's something to be said about that steady income that you're getting. So I get that. I absolutely understand that. But I think the other layer to that is that we don't really get, as creators, we don't really get a real truth sense of what it's going to take for us to continue to create this content in a sustainable way, in a way that actually gives us the reality of what it is going to take to both serve our audience, give our audiences what they want, continue to grow the audience, and also to really gauge for ourselves what the audience participation and or our podcast and or show is actually worth to, future cast our businesses 5 years ahead of time. What is it that we're going to need? Because this injection of money sometimes misaligns the space at times. And there are going to be times when there's going to be a downturn. There are going to be times when it's going to escalate like crazy. And you're just going to be like, whoa, this is amazing. My show is growing so much. So we have to just have our eyes wide open to recognize that. I think especially for you, Rob, I mean, just hats off to you for understanding these ebbs and flows of an industry now that we're in it for 2 decades, right? And there aren't very many people that have a visceral hindsight historical perspective that you've lived through and seen the ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was on a call yesterday with the manager for actually 3 big comedians, and he pointed out something too about MGs and getting demonetized on certain platforms, because this was someone that they're content creators that they're managing, and they're big name celebrities and comedians. So I don't want to give out who they are, but as a comedian, you say lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
And there are now, when over half of your audience is from YouTube, and part of the MG part of it was revenue generated out of YouTube, and the algorithm from YouTube to keep you up there, and so that you get, even from the host read, you're getting those downloads counting. If you were to say anything about COVID that's out of line, if you were to make a joke about the Wuhan lab, you could be demonetized and penalized on the YouTube algorithm. There's certain things that are triggers for being de-emphasized on YouTube. And he said one of the issues when you go through these MGs and guarantees is some of the producers are feeling like now they're being stifled in what they can say, because they're so afraid, because the good contracts are written, that if they get deplatformed, the MG goes away. If they get penalized, that if they lose, if they say something where Google penalizes them, because we're starting to see shows that are doing what we call simulcast, and that's including YouTube. And because of those algorithms, that's it. The other interesting thing was he's saying one of his comedians, the episode numbers, depending on what the person talked about, could vary as much as 75% because of algorithms. But in the podcast, he goes, the podcast, this one show was getting 150,000 an episode, plus or minus 5,000. He goes, it's so consistent. But the YouTube was varying all over the place, because sometimes he would make a joke about, things that there's like 3 trigger things from YouTube, and he would make jokes sometimes about all 3, I guess, and it would penalize him. And then the next episode suffers when you get penalized and de-algorithmed and demonetized. So that's another thing to think about if you're doing MGs. Any company that's offering you an MG is going to have a clause in there about if you get demonetized, deplatformed. So that means you are now giving up some freedom of speech. It's going to be in the back of your mind, where you don't have that. If you're just getting regular revenue over and over, you can say whatever you want. You don't have to worry about that so much. Anyway, just something to think about, because that was an interesting call. And the funny thing was I had to do the call. So I had to do this call with this person, and my wife was picking a friend up for the airport. So I had to go pick my son up and his friend from school. And we're talking about one of the celebrities, and both my son and his friend listen to that celebrity's podcast or watch him on YouTube.
Oh,
I was a proud dad moment. They're like, such and such?
you were famous for like a second
for
with your kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a one-sided thing, and really thinking through we have to, and if, listen, there's also people who really just want like a big payout and out, and you don't have that much invested in longevity or, you just want to get the biggest bang for your buck right now. And it really is a quick injection hit for you in the end, right? Okay. Well, your values are straight up front. And if that's what you're looking for, then take the money and run. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of us that really want to be creating something with longevity and that keeps moving forward and that we want to sustain, we have to think through the fancy stuff that is coming our way. That's all. My suggestion for, I think, all of us. It's sort of like, winning the lottery. There's so many people who are lottery winners who don't really quite know what to do with that cash, and they don't really necessarily end up better doing the stuff. That's just a random example, not really totally true all the way around. But anyway, we do have a little something that we are doing, and I'm so excited. The 4th annual, the Latino Podcast Listener Report, will be on October 5th. And we are having a networking event this week. This is a partnered event. So the BIPOC Podcast Creators is having a networking event pre-report. So pre-report, we're getting together and discussing some things with a panel discussion of some incredible guests. And then this Thursday, September 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern, everybody is welcome. you can come and hang out and we're going to be talking monetization and speaking of, what a wonderful transition. I should have really thought through this, but we're really going to talk about monetization and creating sustainable business models and with real life examples from a lot of folks that are going to be coming in there and talking with us about some really, I think, tangible and real, true facts of what it is to create money as a creator. But moving back to the PR that came out from Edison Research, this is what it said, quote, the 4th annual Latino Podcast Listener Report will debut in a webinar on Thursday, October 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern. This year's study will focus on podcast monetization and advertising potential through the lens of the Latinx consumer. The study from Edison Research was commissioned by LWC Studios, Latina to Latina, Libsyn, Latino Media Network, and SXM Media, and will be presented by Gabriel Soto, Senior Director of Research at Edison Research, Elsie Escobar, yay, me, Director of Community and Content at Libsyn, and co-founder of She Podcast, and Brianna Mendez, Senior Sales Marketing Manager at SXM Media. Soto, Escobar, and Mendez will also share updates on baseline statistics from prior years and will present video interviews of U.S. Latino podcast listeners discussing how they've interacted with podcasts, what products or services they purchased after hearing about it on a show, and how they feel about advertisements on podcasts. A webinar recording will be available at the presentation's conclusion, and English and Spanish versions will be available for download. A virtual networking event, Monetizing Latine Podcasts Pre-Report Networking, will be held by Libsyn and BIPOC podcast creators on Thursday, September 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. The event will include a preview of the 4th Latino Podcast Listener Report and meaningful discussions on monetizing podcasts with Latino audiences.
So are you doing 2 different webinars, one in English and then one in Spanish?
No, we're actually just doing one in English, but the report itself, the PDF, is going to be in Spanish and in English. Yeah.
Okay. It says, I thought it said a webinar recording will be available at the presentation's conclusion. Oh, and English and Spanish version will be available for download. Okay. So I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we did that in the past, but it wasn't quite, it's harder, obviously, to get Spanish-speaking audiences to show up for that. We worked our little tushes off to make that happen, and when you see the numbers, you go, I don't know. So then, but the PDF in Spanish and English, I think, does have longevity for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
All right. So now we're moving into promo number 2. This is Obstacle Running Adventures.
Hey, it's Mike.
And Caitlin.
From Obstacle Running Adventures.
We are a weekly podcast that covers obstacle course racing,
running,
and other types of adventures.
We have been releasing episodes consistently since 2017.
And we have had guests on the show ranging from the Boston Marathon winner,
Desiree Linden,
American Ninja Warrior,
Joe Moravsky,
and the GOAT of obstacle course racing,
Lindsay Webster,
and over 800 other athletes over the years.
Please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
And follow along with us as we head into OCR World Championship season.
And we travel down to Texas to cover the 24-hour World's Toughest Mudder events in person.
Thank you.
Bye.
Fantastic.
All right.
Okay, and we are moving directly into some audio feedback from Steve Stewart.
Hey, Rob and Elsie, it's Steve from stevestewart.me, and I've got a question about the future YouTube. When YouTube begins to ingest RSS feeds, I've got some questions that pertain to Libsyn-specific customers. I've got a client who has his YouTube channel set up in his Libsyn account, but for some reason just hasn't been posting for years. It seems like a couple of years. So I was about to recommend he goes and sets it up again, and we go back and start posting them from Libsyn to YouTube. However, if YouTube will begin to ingest RSS feeds, does that mean when that time comes, we'll just be able to submit the RSS feed in some way, and it will then pull all the episodes and create YouTube videos from the audio only? We don't have video for this. And then going forward, would pushing from Libsyn to YouTube, is that step even necessary? If YouTube's going to be reading the RSS feed, I think that step becomes, it would become duplication for sure. Or am I wrong on this? Or maybe you guys have somehow, or you are working on arranging some new way of a hybrid of this, where it goes out from Libsyn with the widescreen thumbnail to YouTube onto the podcast playlist of my client. I don't know. Tell me what I'm missing or what you're envisioning. And I know you're going to keep us up to date anyway, but I was about to tell my client, hey, let's go and push all these to YouTube from your Libsyn account. And I'm thinking, no, let's save ourselves a step. Maybe we can save ourselves some work here. Appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you for the wonderful service. My podcast is still on Libsyn since 2010, although I don't release new episodes. That's how long I've loved Libsyn. Have a great day.
So, Steve, first thing, since the RSS ingestion isn't there yet, I don't know exactly what YouTube can and can't do, and I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say because we're under NDA. So I'm going to say this. Long and the short, if you already have your Libsyn account connected to YouTube where we're converting your audio to video and it's uploading, there's no reason to change. It already goes and you're getting your stats back, and that's even better. So doing the connection that through Libsyn is going to be better for you than just going over and submitting your RSS feed because you're getting the stats back into your Libsyn account. So I'll just say that. If you're already doing it, you're hosting on Libsyn, you're better off just staying that. I don't know or what I'm allowed to say on what everything else is until it's launched. Once it's launched, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But in the meantime, here's what I'll tell you. Don't disconnect your YouTube connection that you have in your Libsyn account when this comes out. So I can say that up front. Just keep with your current connection. You're fine. It's in there. You're done. Boom. Just keep it going. If you're someone like me that's had your connection to YouTube for 10 plus years, no reason to disconnect it.
Again, we'll have to refigure a lot of this stuff out as well when we move forward. So here's a little amazing tool that one of my friends / podcaster pros, Carly Nemo, shared in one of her Instagram stories, aka Reels. And it's really, really awesome, Rob. You can find it over at podcast.adobe.com/mic-check. And it is a super simple little tool that's built in. It's a web app, and you just go to it and you can check how your mic is doing there. And it gives you almost everything that you really need to figure out whether or not somebody can hear you and what the level of your microphone is and, other layers that come into what's going on with your microphone. This is something that I think it's really easy for somebody to double check, especially if you're a new microphone. A new microphone. If you're you're not a microphone. If you're a new podcaster and you really don't know if you sound okay.
Or if you have a new studio or a new microphone.
Or if you have it, yeah, absolutely. So this is a wonderful little check. It really kind of figures out what your sound is overall, what could be adjusted, and all kinds of things. And it's free, you guys. Check it out. It's part of the Adobe Podcast Beta suite of tools.
Yeah, Adobe's been giving us some good tools. I'm using their sweetener for stuff I work on.
It's very, very cool. So I really love that. Okay, we have a little bit of feedback. I'm going to go ahead and read this email. Hi, Rob. I understand what you are saying about feed drops. They can seem very intrusive. I have done a couple in the last year with other podcasters who are friends. They have helped grow my regular audience by about 30%. I only did shows that made sense and also were appropriate size. I would not do a feed swap with a smaller show, or at least a much smaller show. I labeled these shows clearly. With one of my shows, the episode they used for the feed swap on their end of my interview of them, which made sense for their audience. And this is from Chris Christensen, Amateur Traveler Podcast.
Right. And then we also have listener feedback. So we're going to play that here.
Okay.
From Dave.
Hey, Rob and Elsie. This is Dave with the Wet Fly Swing Podcast. Just checking in. I heard that episode where you're talking about the feed swaps. I call them feed drops. I think it's the same thing. But essentially, we've been doing it, and we have an independent podcast. I think it's a little different maybe than what Wondery and some of the larger podcast networks are doing. What we've been doing that's been working, that seems to be working, is we reach out to another podcaster in our space that might be fly fishing outdoors, and we say, hey, how about we bring you on our show, we'll do an interview with you, and then we'll feed drop that into your feed. And the cool thing is, I think what we've heard is that listeners of those other shows, they love hearing their favorite host being interviewed. So they get to hear it's on our podcast, but it's dropped to their feed. So they get to hear their favorite host being interviewed. And I've heard some of these in past feed drops we've done. Some of these episodes have been some of our our guests on their feed most listened to podcast episodes, because it's like they get to hear them on the interview. So anyways, it's not just a random episode, I don't think, of our podcast. It's specifically to the host. So I think that's been working. I'm going to work on getting more concrete data that shows this. I think anecdotally it seems to be working, but we've got a big push the next few months of doing these. So I'm hoping that we can bring back some data. Thanks again for all the great work you do. I appreciate this topic, and I appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.
So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chris, for the feedback. And I should re-clarify. If the feed drop is in a show with the same niche, that will be much more likely to generate good results and not annoy the listeners as much. I think a good promo will work just as well if it's strategically placed and well produced. And I would still recommend the promo drop over the feed drop. But if it is for a show that's no longer producing content in your niche, then definitely go with the feed drop for it. Per comments of the feed drops for where you are interviewed, then yeah, that is completely different animal altogether. And definitely go for that, as it gives your audience a different look at you from another show's perspective. And I wouldn't even call that a feed drop. If you're doing an interview on another show, I would call that bonus content at that point, right? I mean, it's you're just being interviewed by someone else, and it's giving you a perspective that your audience might not know. You might do a history podcast, and then you go and get interviewed on Podcast 411, and you take the interview from Podcast 411 and put it into your feed. While it's not history content per se, it is you, the host, that is showing a different side that your audience more than likely is interested in hearing about. So again, I would not call putting an interview you did on another podcast in the feed a feed drop. I would call that bonus content, just from the perspective of your audience. If you being interviewed on another podcast annoys your audience, you have other issues.
Oh my God. All right.
I just did an interview. It hasn't come out yet, but it was a really good one, because we talked about content strategy, and maybe we'll try that. Maybe we'll try a feed drop in the feed of me being on another podcast and see what the feedback is. We'll see if they're willing to do that. I don't know. We'll see. No promise.
Yeah. And also, let's go to the next bit of feedback here, because it might be the same. Okay. So we got another feedback about feed swaps. Okay. This is from Cheryl, who tested it out. So this is what she said. The feed swap is active. We both released yesterday. This actually turned out to be very timely, because we had recorded an episode about the new Silver Award requirements for her show last spring. Since those requirements are going into effect October 1st, there's a lot of chatter on social media with questions. Now I can share my episode when I see those questions. I will say a learning I had from this was I did not send the intro to my editor. I thought I could handle that myself. I can hear it in the playback when it came through my podcast player. And she has a little bit of a face palm emoji there. So it looks to me that they both recorded an episode and they shared it at the same time in both shows. And this is what I gather from this email, in that the difference in the actual bulk of the content is that the intro part of it was the difference, right? So it was like an introduction to the show and the other show. I don't know if that's like what you're thinking too, Rob, which is sort of, it would be an intro of me coming in on the feed, right? And saying like, hey guys, this is a bonus episode of the feed. This is Rob being interviewed in blah, 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 blah episode. I hope you guys enjoy. And then the episode comes on of the other thing. Okay. We have another email for you. Right. Hey, Rob. First off, I think we have to thank you for pushing our Cars Up podcast movement, because in the little while since, there has been a big uptick in downloads on our show, both Mandalore and Tomorrow's Legends, and all for older episodes. It's like some people were going back into the catalog and trying all kinds of different ones. So that had to be because of cards going out. Topic question: YouTube. I've created a channel for Tomorrow's Legends, and we've started uploading actual videos of the show now from us just recording the Zoom call. And I'll be doing it for Mandalore soon also. But I wanted to add in the audio component that you keep pushing on the feed, where Libsyn converts the audio to a static image and uploads to YouTube as well, like all other destinations. I was hoping we can have it uploaded to the same channel, but the audio-only playlist. so that people have a choice when they find out channel. Either watch the actual video or play the audio, only static image one. Is this possible? And can you point me to the directions on how to set it all up if it's not already in Libsyn 5? Thanks so much.
So here's what I would say. If you have actual dynamic video, moving pictures, images, and that's being uploaded to YouTube, then there's no reason to upload the static image one to YouTube. People can listen to just the audio in YouTube and not watch the video. So there's no reason to have 2 episodes of the same exact content up there, one with dynamic video and one with a static image video. So I would say don't even bother. Just upload the dynamic video if you've got it. Really, the upload we have where we're converting it to video with the static image is for people that don't have the dynamic video available. Ultimately, the reason you're uploading to YouTube in that scenario isn't for consumption anyway, it's for discovery. Number 2 search engine in the world. You've heard that phrase many times, right? YouTube. So it's about your show getting discovered there. And if you have dynamic video, let that be discovered and just make sure you're mentioning in that video and have links in that notes for the video to your podcast so that people that do want to ultimately go and listen to it can go ahead and get the podcast as an audio version and consume it on their podcast aggregator app of choice after discovering it on YouTube. That's always been what we said the goal was for getting into YouTube. It wasn't about people consuming at YouTube. It was about people discovering you at YouTube. If they consume at YouTube, that's gravy. It's the discovery part of it that we've always said was the first and foremost key point. And in this case, there's no reason to have 2 versions of the same episode. You're not going to improve your discovery there. That's my opinion.
I have a little bit of a differing opinion.
Okay.
You can test it out, Martin, because that's another thing that you can do. So yes, you're already doing your thing, right? And you can have your Zoom calls recorded and you can have them with a playlist and have them all as a playlist. I would say you can change the title a little bit where you can say something like behind the scenes or live recording of the show, or have a naming convention that's slightly different than your proper podcast name when you put that show out. And that way people can see that. Or you could say video, right? And you could put that out and have that playlist created inside of your YouTube channel. Check out the video that we'll put in the show notes here. We did create a video that walks you exactly through what you want to do, which is what I gathered from your email, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you wanted to create separate playlists, one of them which is your video playlist and one of them is your audio playlist. So yes, you can absolutely do that. That's what we do for the feed on YouTube. We have a playlist and I don't even have to do anything after, once I publish the show, it automatically goes into that playlist without me doing anything. It just goes into that playlist. So you can have just that audio playlist there. It is delineated as a podcast. It looks really nice and slick. So you can test it out. And I do go in there and I optimize the title a tiny little bit. Like I just switch it around a small little bit. And I also have a template for show notes on YouTube that is different than the show notes that I have in the RSS feed, because YouTube doesn't show hyperlinks. And I'm not going to make all of our pretty show notes into naked links just for YouTube. So I have a template. I only do the bullet points and the time codes. And then I have a link to our show notes so that if somebody wants all the links, they can click through to those and find all the things. So that's how I've been doing it. And you can test it out and see what does better in terms of people watching, whether it's worth your time to do that. And you can figure it out all on your own there. I don't know what the consumption is in terms of audio versus video. Like I don't even have a thing. Like if Rob and I were making a video and or an audio, I don't know what that would look like. I'd be curious. So maybe you can do it for us.
I'm going to transition just to some sad news here. John Beethan with Imagine Podcasting, some of you may know him, passed away earlier this month. He did editing and production for a bunch of shows. He's been to multiple podcast conferences, and I'm sure some of you have met with him. I did multiple times. Just very sad news when we lose someone who has been part of the community for many years. John, you'll be missed.
Yeah. I had a few one-on-one meetings with him and got to know him very well. And he was a huge supporter of everything live education that we did here at Libsyn. He was always there. He was always learning. And he's just he's a great guy. Really, really nice guy. Okay. We have a question for all of you listening. I do not have a solution to this problem, so I'm sending it out to you all, our community, the feed. I hope that you can help out. Here's the question. I'm looking for an AI tool to help me create a book for my podcast. The difference between the tools I'm finding and what I need is most tools create content based on a single episode and have you put multiple episodes together for your book. What I need is to be able to upload all my content and then pull information for multiple episodes for a theme subject. My show is about the Girl Scout Gold Award, and I want to pull excerpts regarding the different requirements to earn the award and other themes related to the process. Anyone know of any tools? Thanks. And this is from Cheryl.
Cheryl, good luck with that. I don't think we're at that point where the automatic transcription is accurate enough to do that without a lot of human gray matter intervention. But if anyone knows of something out there that get her close, let us know. But I still think you're going to have a lot of gray matter editing to go over. As we talked previously about the lifting little yellow fowl analogy and how things, artificial intelligence, unfortunately, the A in artificial intelligence, in AI, artificial sweetener, artificial turf, I don't think we're there yet. As good as ChatGPT is, the transcription of human voice into text, that's where you're going to hit the real roadblock. Now, if you had full transcriptions that were human done and 99.99% accurate, then you might be able to find some AI tools that do what you're looking for. But just going and here's my feed and pull this from this, I think you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you, is my opinion.
I'm curious though, even that though, Rob, I think the tool that she's looking for too is let's take the transcription out of it and let's just think about that ingestion tool. So if somebody does have a tool that they know that isn't necessarily there to both suck in all the episodes and transcribe them and then do the thing, what if you already have the transcriptions and you want the tool to do the work of parsing the content out and pulling out the best content out of all the episodes? I think that's of more value versus the transcription. You can pay somebody to do that. Like, who cares? Whatever. That can be done separately as it would be nice to have both, but I get it. But I think that the key to this would be, I would find that valuable too, to be able to ingest.
I agree with you. That part might exist and there might be tools for that. It's my biggest concern is if you're pulling it from the RSS feed and then relying on AI to do the transcription part of it. That's where I think that's the issue. Now, again, if there's someone that knows of a tool where you can give lots of text, tens and hundreds of thousands of words of text, and it correlates and pulls out based off of contextual themes and topics, let us know. Because, you're talking 10,000 words per hour of episode. And if you're talking hundreds of episodes, you're talking hundreds, maybe even millions of words that are going to have to be uploaded and run through this AI and parsed and sourced. But in the big picture of things, a million words is not that much, right? When there's billions of words being processed by AI all the time, from new content every day, billions and billions of new words. But you still have to be able to upload those millions, in this case, at least many hundreds of thousands of words of content, and then pull out the topics around that one topic. So if anyone knows a tool like that you can upload textual information, I think that would be where you'd be best start with. And then, as Elsie said, figure out how to get the audio to an accurate text format as a separate piece.
And I want to share a little bit of a tool here, Rob. Oh my gosh. I know that you might think like, what in the world and why, Elsie? Why? So I'm in love with a tool called Matter. And I have been a Matter stan now for since 2020. I think that the tool itself, this is at its core, a modern RSS feed reader. Okay. So let's put it that way. That's what Matter is. And it does have extra things that are added to it in the sense that it's really a place for reading. That's what this is for. It's for a read later type of client, RSS feed parser. You can do things like obviously subscribe to RSS feeds and pulls them in there. But the other thing that it does too is that you can also subscribe to newsletters and have them all come in there as well. So if you do want to have like a place to read all your things, this is a really lovely app. It's very beautifully designed. It has all kinds of like the shareableness of it all is great. You can manage the knowledge in really wonderful ways. You can also do all kinds of highlighting and note taking on the app and then, send that information to your note app, knowledge management app of choice. If you want to export those things, you can also send exports out to, social. If you want to quote things, you can send it out to your other people if you want to share information with them. So it's really like researching, curating content, learning about things. That's what it is. But currently, something that they just added to the mix is the ability for readable podcasts. And at first you might think, why? Why would I want to read it? Okay, here's the thing. So I've talked about Snipped in the past, which is an app. It's a podcast app. And one of the wonderful things about Snipped is that it actually automatically transcribes your show and or pulls your existing transcription if you happen to already have it in your RSS feed, whatever, whether it's yours or they created for you. They have AI working behind the scenes to be able to do that. And Snipped does it basically in bulk, if you will, and or you can also do the same types of stuff that I was just talking about. You can highlight things and then export it out to your knowledge management system. But the thing with Snipped is that it is a separate workflow. Like if I were listening to like let's say our show is one of the best shows to do this with. You're listening to the feed. We have been talking about all kinds of really wonderful things that you love. And you're like, oh my God, I have to remember that. So what I would have to do then if I wanted to highlight wonderful, smart things Rob said, is that I would have to go into Snipped, download or add that episode to my list or whatever, and then highlight it manually in the app and do all kinds of stuff and then export it out to my thing. But now what Matter does is that it connects to Spotify, it connects to Apple Podcasts, it's connected to like Castro, yay. And so if I'm listening to a podcast in episode in any of those places, and I'm halfway, like if you guys are listening to this right now and you're like, oh my God, this episode is amazing, so much information, you can send it in the share menu. Send it to Matter. Matter pulls it in. Matter transcribes it for you. Matter has a player there. And then you can kind of go back and reference it later so that if you're like, okay, they were talking about Matter. They were talking about the latest PR. They were talking about, what their thoughts on, what are minimum guarantees. I really like that section. They can now open Matter. It's already there for you. You can just skim to what Rob and I were talking about, highlight that section. Boom, you got it. It's just right there. So it's not a podcast player. It's there for you to remember and retain information. And it really is synced through your iPad and your iPhone. It's astounding, Rob. I was so impressed by the execution of this because it's solving a very specific problem. It's not a podcast listening app. It's a culling information reading app to retain stuff. So I have podcasts that are jam-packed with information. And those are the ones that I used to listen to Snipped. And now I'm using Matter because I actually am a patron of their app. Full disclosure, I did pay for 3 years in advance when they made that offering. So I'm a premium subscriber till 2026 or something, or 2025. So I get all of this extra bonus stuff. So this is a paid thing, but it's a beautiful app for that.
And you'll have a link to this in the show notes.
Absolutely.
All right.
And now, moving on.
Yes, now to get us to our third promo. Elsie, do you want to introduce this one?
Oh my God, shout out Harris. You got me. He sent me 6 promos created just for the feed so that I could use them whenever I'm running out of stuff. Harris, high five, my friend. You are amazing. And say hello to promo number 3. This is from Calm History.
In 1912, Rob Walsh was on the top deck of the Titanic during its maiden voyage. Spying a large iceberg ahead, he yelled up to the captain, "Hey, Mr. Magoo, you might want to avoid that." Rob's keen eye helped to prevent a tragic ending for this massive ocean liner. To hear the true story of the Titanic, narrated in a calm tone to help you to relax or sleep, just search for Calm History in your podcast player, or go to calmhistory.com.
Harris, thank you so much for that. All right, we're going to move into stats and user agents. So this is, after that promo, and now we're talking stats. You may, if you're driving the car, want to pull over and not operate a heavy motor vehicle at this point. Yeah, if you're working heavy machinery, you're riding the mower, let's watch out for the neighbor's cat. All right, here we go. First up, for stats, we're going to do geographic and user agent breakdowns. And first up is country breakdowns for August per downloads geographically from all sources. US, 63.8%, Canada, 5.2%, UK, 5%, Australia, 3.7%, Germany, 2.5%, Sweden, 1.7%, India, 1.3%. That's everybody above 1%, rounding out the top 20 in order. Japan, Spain, France, Mexico, Netherlands, Denmark, Brazil, New Zealand, Norway, Colombia, Ireland, South Africa, and Poland. And we had Norway move into the top 20 for August. Between August and July, those with changes greater than 0.2% was the United States, jumping from 62.8% in July to 63.8% in August. Of course, check your stats and see how you measure up against these numbers for August. And now into user agents part of stats. And this is for August across all shows globally, hosting on Libsyn, Libsyn Pro for IAB stats. Mobile downloads were at 93.65% of all downloads going direct to mobile devices. I think that's the second highest percentage we've ever had, coming close to last October's record of 93.8%. That's up a bunch from July when it was 92.96%. And then computer downloads were down a little at 6.08%. Home and voice attendants plus set-top boxes were at 0.27%. That's 0.27% in August. The iOS to Android ratio in August was 5.6 to 1. That's up a smidge from July's 5.4 to 1. Traditionally, September and October tend to be higher for iOS to Android, so we'll see what happens here. We'll see if we get to 6 to 1 here before the October is over. And then mobile aggregator apps, not from Spotify or from Apple, in August were 10.97% of all downloads. That's up a smidge from the 10.95% in July. And the big dog in aggregator apps is still Apple, with Apple Podcast app and iTunes and Apple ecosystem coming in at 66% of all downloads for August. Number 2 in August was Spotify at 15.2%. Google Podcast, number 3 at 2.3%. Number 4 was Overcast at 1.7%. Number 5 was Pocket Cast at 1.0%. And that was everyone 1% or greater. Those under 1%, but greater than 0.4% in order were the Podcast app, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, and probably for the last time, Stitcher. And then a little gap, followed by those in order between 0.2% and 0.02%. And they are Player FM, Podcast Republic, AntennaPod, Downcast, Samsung Podcast, Evox, Pandora, TuneIn, Radio, Deezer, Podimo, Snipped, Fountain, Real Life app, that's on Android, Castro, iCatcher, Rezo, TikTok, combined, Air, Podcatcher, RSS Radio, Mixerbox, Podcast Guru, and Axios. And then many more that come in at less than 0.02% and don't really warrant mention yet. Again, those were based on IAB numbers. Outside of aggregator apps, there were browsers. Chrome came in at 3.2%, Safari was at 1.1%, Mozilla 0.4%, Firefox at 0.3%. Overall, all browsers combined to just around 5% of downloads in August. Once again, if you see a show with over, say, 10K downloads a month and more than, say, 10% is from browsers, you might want to really question some things that are going on. Typically speaking, the higher the total download number for downloads for a show, the lower the percentage should be for browsers. Just a little advice there. Staying with stats and reports, our AdvertiseCast team updated their monthly podcast advertising rates. These rates, which are denoted as cost per thousand or CPM, the data is derived from actual sales data from across the thousands of podcasts in the AdvertiseCast marketplace. For August 2023, the average CPM rate was $22.14 for a 60-second ad spot. That figure is down a smidge compared to last month, July 2023, when the average CPM rate was $22.20. And that has decreased a little bit year over year. August 2022, the average CPM rate was $23.41. The three highest CPM categories in August based on delivered advertising were technology, education, and arts, all coming in at $26 CPMs. Moreover, three categories where advertisers can effectively tap into highly engaged audiences at a more accessible CPM rate, i.e. their rates are lower, include sports, news, and TV and film, which averaged around the low 20s in August. Average means average. Some shows had higher rates, some had lower. And then Dave Hanley was nice enough to give us a quote. Dave is our Chief Revenue Officer at AdvertiseCast Libsyn, and he said, quote, "Following podcast movement, it's abundantly clear that the value of podcasting has reached new heights. The conference once again showcased the incredible diversity and creativity within the podcasting ecosystem. As the industry continues to grow, so does the understanding of the unique relationship between content, context, and audience engagement. Brands are increasingly recognizing that context matters as much as content. It's not just about delivering a message, it's about delivering it in the right context to the right audience at the right moment. We take pride in being at the forefront of podcasting innovations, and our newly launched predictive contextual advertising solution stand as a testament to our commitment to staying ahead of the curve," unquote. Well, thanks, Dave and team, for keeping the space educated on where average ad rates are for podcasting on a per ad read basis. And of course, if you are interested in advertising on a podcast, maybe to promote your show or to a similar audience, or maybe to promote a product, please email me directly, rob@libsyn.com, and I can get you the right people, and AdvertiseCast can help you grow your show or sell your product via podcast advertising. Again, email me direct, rob@libsyn.com, if you are looking to advertise on other podcasts. So where have we been? Elsie, I'll let you go first because I got a longer where have I been?
Oh, where have I been? I don't really. I think I've been recording some stuff for Libsyn EDU, which is the stuff that, we're putting out there. We've been preparing for some things that are coming up, but I haven't really been anywhere. So you go.
So this is a longer one, and I saved it for this part of the show. So for those that stuck around, smart of you. I attended a local show here in Nashville in September this past week, B&M Summit. It was on September 13th and 14th. Again, why we're recording today on Saturday. I thought about it, and of the 200 plus shows that I've been to over the last 19 plus years, this was only the third time I can remember where I went 100% as an attendee. Not a speaker, not an exhibitor, not press, just as an attendee. It was kind of strange, actually. Per the other two times, one was to a magazine marketing conference. As I've always said, podcasting is more like magazines than radio, so that was a good one. Gave a good perspective. That was back maybe 2014, 15, somewhere around then. And then there was an ad tech conference in San Francisco back in 2015, 2016. That was the time I had a kidney stone and missed half the conference as I was in the hospital in San Francisco. So I'm not going to soon forget that one. Funny story for another time. But back to B&M Summit. No kidney stones, thankfully. And this was for the talk radio industry. And it was very interesting to hear how they looked at and talked about the podcasting space. First, Dave Ramsey was one of the speakers, and he talked about getting over 1 billion downloads for his podcast, which is Repurposed Radio Program. And those downloads did not eat away or negatively affect his syndication ratings. Actually, it looks to have helped it. His message was clear. Repurposing your talk content will not hurt your ratings. Larry Rosen from Nielsen was there, and he showed how people consuming talk radio and those consuming podcasts are about to cross in the U.S., as per the number of them. Being this year or next, there will be more people listening to podcasting than talk radio. Very eye-opening to the audience there. He showed the rapid decline of those with radios in their home. He pointed out in one slide that basically from 1950, when they had stopped doing the survey, to when he picked it back up in like 2006 or so, it stayed at 96% of households had a radio in the household. And now they started looking at it again in the last 10 years, and now that number's down into the 60 percentile range. So, yeah, think about that. How many of you have a radio in your house that's not a weather radio that has a crank on it that you pull out in emergencies, but actually a radio sitting there that you can turn on and actually use and listen to local radio? We haven't had one in my household in 15 plus years. And others talked about needing to have a podcast strategy and embracing podcasting. It was not a podcasting was bad vibe. It was a how do we get our content we have now onto podcasting vibe. Also, how do we recruit podcasting talent to radio? That was mentioned multiple times. There was the where do we go to get the next Rush or Howard Stern talk? Or more accurately, how do I identify that person and get them on the air? And what I think they did not get is that that person already exists. His name is Joe Rogan. Spotify locked him up. Once Rogan's deal with Spotify is over, though, Joe just needs to go back to being everywhere, and he'll blow up as big as Stern or Rush, and without a need to be on radio. He could do it just by being everywhere you listen to podcasts now. They did mention that Stern's influence was definitely diminished by him just being on Sirius, and there was one person that said Rogan is having that same thing happen to him with just being on Spotify. So just point that out, Joe, if you're listening, or Jamie. I agree 100% with that observation, by the way. Sorry, don't want this to be a Rogan soapbox thing. Back to radio. What they are looking for, and I got out of this conference a few things. One, the radio industry, they're looking to get all their talk content out to podcasting, which will mean more competitors for all of us. Two, they mentioned video only briefly, but said it's a lot more work to get broadcast quality video and basically just focus on short video clips and use YouTube for discovery. A lot of what we've been saying for years. Number three, podcasting can be a place for them to find their talent, to prove out their talent also before putting them on the air. So if you want to get on radio right now, is a good time to reach out to a local radio station. They're looking for talent, and just talk to them about your show and if this is something that is of desire for you. Number four, podcasting is not to be ignored and needs to be embraced. Even they said at one point, podcasting is to talk radio now what FM was to AM on the music side in the 70s. And there was people nodding their head when they said that, not people being shocked. There was a presentation from Pierre Bouvard from Westwood One that went over metrics and trends for radio and how podcasting was affecting radio, which I had to ask him for the slide deck, as it was even more pro-podcasting than my presentations on podcasting. And that's saying a lot. And so thanks, Pierre, for sending that over. It's gold, Jerry. Gold, I tell you. I tweeted out some screenshots. And one of them I'll mention is the one when they did surveys and they asked people, what's your need to learn something? What medium do you go to when you want to learn something? And in order from most picked to least, podcasts was picked by 51% of those surveyed. Check news was 38%, watch short video 32%, check weather 21%, check social media is 19%, watch shows or episodes 17%, listen to AM FM radio 15%, listen to free Spotify 10%, listen to music 7%, listen to free Pandora 7%. I want to know who the 7% are that are listening to music to learn something. What are you learning? What is it that Megan Thee Stallion is going to teach you? Anyway, by far, podcasts were number one for where people go to learn something new. And that is just a great stat and shows how people look at podcasting. And as we have said here many times, right? Educate or entertain, or better yet, do both, and you can build an audience. And actually, there was another slide, the top 3 reasons people listen to podcasts in order. 1, to learn something new. 2, to be entertained. 3, to pass time. None of that is new to those listening to the show over the years, right? We've talked about that, all those 3 many times. And thanks to the folks at B&M Summit, all the speakers and attendees that were there. It was great talking with them and learning from them. And I look forward to going to that event again next year. It was a small event, but the people that were there were the right people in that have been around radio for a long time in the talk radio side. And again, I think I went into it going, oh, let's see how much they bash podcasting. And there wasn't a single bashing of podcasting. It was, hey, this is a tool. This is a medium that you need to use as a radio station to grow your brand, build your monetization, embrace it. That was what I got out of this, was embrace podcasting. So we went from being, when I've gone to radio events 10 years ago, we were the ugly redheaded stepchild, to now Cinderella at the event. So it was very eye-opening for me just to see how the change from the radio folks has happened over the last 10 years.
Well, good to know.
Any feedback, folks, if you're on radio, any feedback you want to send, Rob at Libsyn.com. Love to hear it. Or send it to us here too at the feed. We'll get to that point here in a second. But where are we going? Well, I think Dave already did his event, right?
Yes, it's a monthly event. It's every month. So it's an ongoing event. That's where we're going.
So Dave's, you can learn podcasting. Well, we have a link to that in the show notes. But then I'll be going to Content Marketing World in Washington, D.C. That is September 26th to the 28th. I'm not presenting. We're just there exhibiting. So I'm looking forward to that event. I'll see Corey there and some other folks from Libsyn. But if you're going to Content Marketing World, come by the Libsyn booth, say hi, we'll talk podcasting. So where are you going?
We are going to be doing our networking event this week. Please show up. There's going to be a link in the show notes. So if you're interested in any kind of information, especially as it pertains to the future of podcasting and future audience diversification and monetization, you need to be there.
And then you have an e-league thing coming up in early October?
I do. I have a mentorship experience that I'm running for the first time in a long time. So if you want to work with me this year and get yourself together and have big thoughts and prepare for next year and so much, please click through the link in the show notes for that. I close applications October 7th.
I'll be going to NAB NYC October 24th to 26th, obviously in New York City. Libsyn will again be exhibiting at that event. I'll be speaking at PodFest in Orlando, January 25th to 28th, and Libsyn will again be exhibiting at that show. Are you going to PodFest in Orlando?
I believe I will be there, yes.
I'll be at NRB, National Religious Broadcaster Event here in Nashville. That's February 20th to 23rd. We'll be exhibiting at that show. If you are want to be at that show, I'll give an offer up to the audience. I've done this before. And you'd like to come and do a little booth time with us, because I'm going to be the only one at that show. Let me know. Email me, rob@libsyn.com. I'll let you come in. You can bring some of the stuff about your show and put it at our booth and have some time at the booth there with us so you can cover, so I can run off to the bathroom, things like that. But no, it's a show that just really warrants one person. But I always like we have extra tickets, so we get 2 extra tickets to give away. So I've got 1 extra ticket this time. So the first one that would like to go to that show, be there. Again, February 20th to 23rd, email me, rob@libsyn.com. And let's see, we'll be at Podcast Movement Evolutions in LA, March 26th to 29th. And then as for this past Podcast Movement, again, thanks once more about the business cards. Please, folks, for the future shows, if you're not going to any of the shows I just mentioned and you host on Libsyn and want your cards at the show, please send me an email, rob@libsyn.com, and I will send you my snail mail address so you can mail me your cards and we can get them out to that show. And then finally, looking about where you're going, folks, if you are looking for a job in podcasting, make sure to go to podcastingjobs.com. At the beginning of September, we had 2 job openings listed there. Again, that's podcastingjobs.com, and you can see the current openings that we have. And finally, don't forget to send your feedback for anything we did or did not mention on this episode. You can record that feedback and email to us, thefeed@libsyn.com, or you can call us at 412-573-1934. Or finally, you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed.
Right on. And we will chat with you guys in a couple of weeks because we are finished. Thank you so much, all.
Ciao.
Bye.